So last night, Derek Chauvin, the police officer who was sent to prison for 20 years for the death of George Floyd, was stabbed. At this point, we don't know much of the details of the stabbing, although they were considered life-threatening. Right now, it does appear that Derek Chauvin is still alive. I've already seen a lot of people on the internet celebrating this stabbing and cheering and hoping for even the death of Derek Chauvin. But I actually made a video on Derek Chauvin a few days back, coincidentally, talking about why he probably shouldn't be in prison in the first place. And if that's the case, this stabbing is actually pretty tragic. So at this point, a part of me is actually praying for Derek Chauvin to survive this attack. But watch the following video and decide for yourself. Did Derek Chauvin get what he deserved, and is this true justice? Or did an innocent man just get brutally stabbed for a crime he didn't commit?
What the Minneapolis police force trained them to do. Play the clip.
Is this a trained technique that's by the Minneapolis Police Department when you were overseeing the training unit?
It is not.
And how does this differ?
I don't know what kind of improvised position that is. So that's not what we train.
All right. Yeah. As you reflect on Exhibit 17, I must ask you, is this a trained Minneapolis Police Department defensive tactics technique?
It is not.
When I heard that part of the testimony, I really wanted to get up off my chair and yell, bullshit.
Several of those witnesses testified that MRT, or the maximal restraint technique, was not a part of Minneapolis police policy.
Oh, it wasn't part of the training. The pages that didn't want to be presented in court because they weren't in the manual. I've seen the manual. I've read through the manuals. I've seen them. They're not in the manuals? Well, they sure as hell are in Derek's training manuals. So how can they say that they don't exist?
That's Derek's manual.
These are Derek's training manuals.
And MRT is in there?
Yes, it's in there. So how can you say that's not part of the training? So the chief of police at that time told a frickin' lie.
Your attorney wanted to show a photo of MRT to the jury, but Judge Cahill denied it. Was this a key piece of evidence?
I think it certainly is important. Just the fact that it's a PowerPoint training presentation that the city of Minneapolis Police Department delivered using that photograph that at least illustrates some of the training techniques that are performed.
Were you trained in MRT, the maximal restraint technique?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, I was. Yes, we all were. Yes, all the police officers were trained in the MRT.
Your police chief said on the stand that he didn't recognize that technique. I heard him say that. It's tough to hear people lie, just straight lie. And again, goes right back for me, the good and the bad, like the right and the wrong. And for you to be under oath and just straight lie. The amount of training that we go through, I mean, it's consistent every single year. It's written down. It's on body cam. I mean, was that unfortunate? Absolutely. I know Derek Chauvin. It's absolutely horrific what happened, the whole scenario. But did he do anything intentionally to make that happen? No, it was all what we were trained on.
Some of you, I don't want to say many, some of you and others are so locked into racial idolatry and allegiance to blackness that you don't care that 4 police officers are rotting in prison for doing what the city of Minneapolis trained them to do.
So this is crazy, this whole story of Derek Chauvin and George Floyd and things that happened back in 2020, which led to the whole, summer of love with BML and the riots and the burning down, essentially, of Minneapolis. But Whitlock has a really interesting take. I mean, you should really watch the whole clip when you get a chance. He has it on his YouTube channel on The Blaze. But they're covering a new documentary that came out, I believe, fairly recently. And in this particular clip, they're talking about how the testimony of MRT, maximum restraint technique, which was the most controversial element to this whole case of essentially saying that Derek Chauvin, the police officer, killed George Floyd because of putting the knee on the back of the neck. Now, as you can see in this clip, they actually trained Derek Chauvin to do this very technique, MRT, and it was in the manuals, as his mother was showing in the actual documents of the manuals that the son got when he was trained. Sadly, this information was withheld during Derek Chauvin's trial, and the judge said that this information couldn't be shared with the jury. Not to mention, 2 Minneapolis police officers, including the police chief, lied on the stand and said that MRT was never taught to their police officers, although it clearly was, as it's in the actual manual. And then, of course, the multitude of police officers in Minneapolis who came on the documentary and said the same thing, that they were all taught the MRT restraining technique and that it was commonplace. It was just common knowledge too that everybody knew this technique. So the fact that that very technique that was taught by Minneapolis Police Department to Derek Chauvin was the move that he used to restrain George Floyd when he was, resisting the police, is the very thing that they accused him of doing to kill George Floyd, is absolutely insane. On one hand, they literally told Derek Chauvin to do this. On the other hand, they arrest Derek Chauvin for doing this and then throw him in jail for 15 to 20 years. I mean, you really can't win if you're Derek Chauvin. I'm not trying to excuse Derek Chauvin's behavior that day, because common sense would dictate, if you watch that entire video, that there were several points where he could have done things a little bit differently, maybe had some more compassion, maybe had a little more self-restraint and didn't have to really do all the things that he did, despite the fact that the police department told him to do those things. However, to throw a man in prison for 15 to 20 years because he did exactly what the law told him to do seems absolutely blasphemous and just completely wrong. Not to mention, of course, the fentanyl that was in George Floyd's system, the fact that he had heart disease, the fact that he was resisting arrest and really just stressing himself out. If you recall, just him sitting in the back of the police cruiser, just sitting regularly, he was hyperventilating, he was stressing out, he was saying he couldn't breathe long before he was on the ground. So all of these factors, even according to the medical examiner who testified in this trial, contributed to his death. That same medical examiner said that yes, the fact that he was held down made him stress more, made him basically lose oxygen to his body, but he did specifically say the fact that he had heart disease, the fact that he had drugs in his system, the fact that he was stressed out was making all the adrenaline, all those things need more oxygen throughout the body and make him lose more oxygen, which led to his death. So people on the left will say, well, he should have never been held down like that, that officer was, a racist, he was this, he was that, he shouldn't have been on top of him, that's why he died. If he was never on top of him, he would have never died. Yes, if he was never on top of him, he possibly would not have died that day, or probably would not have died that day. He would have just been on drugs and walking around and, having a regular crazy day, but he probably would not have died, correct. But the fact is, he did commit a crime, albeit a small crime. He used a fake counterfeit $20 bill. But he also resisted arrest that put him in that situation. He did not have to resist arrest. He could have sat back in the back of the cruiser until they figured things out. He put himself in that situation. And not to mention, he took those drugs by his own accord. He was stressing out, hyperventilating by his own accord. And the drugs also almost certainly contributed to that as well. The same thing, of course, with the heart disease. That's by his own accord. Lifestyle, diet, etc. contributes to heart disease. Possibly a little bit of genetics, but mainly lifestyle. So all these factors being considered, George Floyd has a lot of responsibility to take in his own death. Again, this is a tragedy. It's a sad thing that happened. I'm not trying to say it's not. But what I am trying to say is, you threw a man in prison for 15 to 20 years who was literally doing exactly what his job entailed and exactly what the law told him to do in that situation. Based on all this information from George Floyd's medical history, from the medical examiner, from the fact that this was actually in the training manual, MRT, based on the fact that the officers lied on the stand, Derek Chauvin deserves to be free. For more videos like this, make sure you hit the follow button now. Take care. God bless America.